You want to see your kid again, right? Then you better do exactly what I say." That voice was sharp, cold, and full of control. But what the man in the fake uniform did not know was that the trembling woman in front of him was not a victim. She was the storm that was about to end his game forever. Her name was Jessica Vance, and by the time this night ended, the badge on his chest would mean nothing. Maple Crest estates looked peaceful, that evening rows of perfect lawns and painted fences, a neighborhood where silence had a cost. Jessica had stopped by after work to drop off papers for a friend. She parked her blue sedan near the park, unaware that she had just stepped into the hunting ground of a man who called himself Officer Hayes. He was not real law enforcement, just an HOA enforcer with a badge he printed and a gun he never should have owned. The HOA thought they hired security, but what they really gave was power to a man who craved fear. He spotted Jessica from his patrol car. Hand on the holster, he approached with a swagger that screamed arrogance. License and registration, he barked before she could even roll down her window. Jessica tried to stay calm. "Is there a problem?" he cut her off. "You are in a restricted zone, and you people think the rules do not apply." His tone made it clear you people meant more than outsiders. It meant women. Alone, it meant easy prey. He ordered her out of the car, and when she obeyed, he smirked. He searched the car without permission, then pretended to find something. Near the back seat, he lifted a small bag of white powder between two fingers and said, "Looks like possession." Jessica froze. Her pulse pounded as he leaned closer, whispering low and vile, "You do as I say, or your little boy grows up without a mother." Start by taking off that top. Fear flashed in her eyes, but behind it, calculation. Because Hayes did not know her hidden camera was already recording every second. She met his stare and said, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." His grin faltered, but only for a second. He grabbed her arm, twisted hard, and shoved her against the car metal, bit into her skin. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she stayed quiet. Not broken, not yet. She knew how predators thought. Let them believe they have control, then take it away bit by bit. Hayes pressed against her too close. Too loud, barking orders while the red light under her sleeve blinked, transmitting everything to a police server. She whispered, "You are making a mistake." "Quiet," he snapped. "You think you can mouth off to law enforcement?" She turned, her head slightly, her voice cut through. "The air, you are not law enforcement, Hayes. You are a coward in costume." For the first time, his hand trembled. "How do you know my name?" She smiled. "Slightly. I make it my business to know men who abuse power." His eyes darted around for control again, but that control was already slipping. Hayes grabbed his radio to call for backup, but what came through made his blood freeze. A real police dispatcher crackled over the line. "Unit 47, report your location," Jessica said softly. "They are listening." Hayes, every word, every lie. He turned and saw the flashing red lights rounding the corner. Silent. Sirens. Two cruisers closing. In panic spread across his face. "Step away." From the vehicle shouted a real officer. Hayes stammered. "She is under arrest." "For what?" the officer demanded. Hayes reached for the fake bag, but Jessica moved. "Faster." She lifted it between her fingers. "You mean this?" "Because that is what he just dropped in my car." The officer stared first at her, then at Hayes. "Sir, put your hands where we can see them." Hayes shouted curses, tried to explain, but his voice cracked. "They searched him. Found two more identical bags in his jacket." Jessica straightened her sleeves and said softly, "You are done, Hayes." The officers cuffed him while he sputtered in disbelief. The woman he thought was prey had just turned into his executioner. "Have you ever seen power flip like that? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters at the precinct." Hayes tried to scream. "Setup and conspiracy," but no one listened. Captain Reynolds stood by the desk, arms crossed, calm and waiting. Hayes was thrown into a chair, still sweating, still trying to act in charge. "She is lying," he shouted. "She is no victim," the captain said quietly. "That random civilian you tried to frame requested this meeting." Hayes blinked. "What meeting?" The captain nodded to the door. Jessica walked in, not the nervous woman from the park, but a detective in a sharp gray suit, badge glinting under the fluorescent light. The room fell silent. Captain Reynolds said, "Officer Hayes, meet detective. Jessica Vance, Internal Affairs, 6th Precinct." Hayes went pale. His voice cracked. "She is a detective." The captain nodded. "We had multiple complaints of abuse, falsified charges targeting women," I asked. "Detective Vance to confirm it. She gave you every chance to act like an officer, and you chose corruption." Jessica stepped. Closer, voice low. "You planted drugs. You made threats. You tried to use fear as a weapon. You failed Hayes." "Spat, you set me up?" Jessica said. "No, you set yourself up." The captain ordered a search of Hayes' patrol car. Within minutes, officers brought back more bags, all identical. The evidence was undeniable. Reynolds turned to him. "Officer Hayes, you are under arrest for misconduct, evidence tampering, and abuse, under color of authority." Jessica stepped forward, slowly removed a pair of cuffs from her belt and replaced the ones on his wrists. The click echoed through the room like a verdict. "Consider yourself relieved of duty," she said. His shoulders slumped, his head hung low, the mask was gone. The predator looked small now as they dragged him through the hallway. Every officer turned. Silent eyes followed him down the corridor. That silence was the sound of an empire falling outside. Sunlight broke through the clouds. Jessica watched as they loaded him into a cruiser. "The same kind of car he once used to terrorize others, Captain." Reynolds joined her. "You handled that well, detective." She nodded. "No one should get away with using power to destroy the innocent." He smiled. "Remind me not to get on your bad side." She gave a tired smile back. "Just do not pull me over." They both laughed. Softly, the storm was over, but justice had only begun within a week. Hayes faced multiple charges: evidence tampering, false imprisonment, and abuse. Under color of authority, the court sentenced him to 32 years with no parole for 16. His badge, his pension, his pride all gone forever. He was added to the National Registry for misconduct, barred from ever wearing a uniform again. Jessica returned to Maple Crest one last time, the same park, the same silence. But this time it was a peace. She looked at the houses that once felt like cages and whispered, "Some rules are meant to protect, not to control." Behind the hedges will always tell stories like this. Real places, real battles, real justice. You will find stories like this every day. Real homeowners, real battles. So make sure you are subscribed to Behind the Hedges. Do not miss what happens next. The story did not end when the cell door slammed shut for Hayes. The real punishment began when silence replaced power. The echo of metal on concrete marked each hour of a life that would never see freedom. Again, he sat on the small bed, staring at the wall paint peeling. Like his pride, every sound of the prison reminded him of his own orders, his own threats. Now turned against him, nights brought no sleep. Only the memory of the faces he had once terrified. In the dark, he would whisper that he was still the one in control, but even his own voice no longer believed it. Jessica watched him once through the thick glass of the observation room. His eyes were dull, his arrogance gone. She felt no joy in seeing him there. Justice was not about revenge, it was about making sure no one else suffered. The same fear, she turned away from the glass, her badge heavy on her chest as she stepped outside. The cold air of the city met her face. The streets glowed under wet asphalt. Lights she drove without. Music, the quiet hum of the engine, matching her heartbeat. She thought of the women whose stories had been silenced before Hayes. She thought of the mothers who never reported the threats because they believed no one would listen. She whispered to herself, "Justice is never quiet, it demands to be heard." At dawn, she parked near Maple Crest again, the same community where it all started. Now the neighborhood looked different. Children laughed. Near the park swings, the tension once thick in the air had vanished. A mother waved as Jessica passed. A small boy ran across the grass chasing a ball, the same ball that once rolled under her car during that night of fear. She smiled faintly, not out of pride, but of relief. She walked to the old oak tree and placed her hand against its rough bark. The sunlight filtered through its branches like a new beginning. The voice in her head whispered, "Power belongs to those who protect, not to those who pretend." She looked up at the sky and felt the weight finally lift, but only for a moment, because deep down she knew the fight was never really over in another town. Another badge, another shadow. Waited for someone else to fall victim, she opened her notebook and wrote a single line. New case pending. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Reynolds. A new complaint. New evidence, another neighborhood. Jessica closed her eyes and nodded softly. Sometimes peace lasts only until the next battle. Have you ever seen justice? Hit this hard. Tell us in the comments. Your story matters. She walked back to her car, the city waking up behind her. The rising sun turned the sky gold, reflecting on the windshield as she started. The engine, the camera of imagination follows her car through the quiet streets as the voice fades. This is behind the hedges where real stories meet real justice.